Welcome back. This is Tim and Julie Harris, and this is your favorite daily podcast. And this, obviously real estate coaching and training radio. And this is our favorite day of the week to do a podcast. This is Friday. And on Fridays, we do not have a structured presentation. We talk about the things in life that sort of, make things interesting, at least for us and hopefully for a lot of you as well. And where we were focused primarily this week are on the new elite coaching clients we've been having join Julie and I's schedule. So do not be surprised if you hear us talking a lot about elite coaching clients. And what is an elite coaching client? That is somebody who primarily is being coached by Julie or myself. I have essentially come out of retirement. I've been a retired top level coach I haven't had a coaching client in 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. And I was realizing listening to Julie's calls, this was probably a month or so ago, that I'm really missing out because it's a little bit of, it's cathartic when you're coaching people, especially people, and we're going to talk about this on today's show, especially people that are already operating at a high level. When you can help people that are operating at a high level go to the next level, it forces you to go to the next level as well. So it's kind of, like I said, cathartic. You get a lot out of it personally. And I realized listening to Julie that I maybe have been missing that in my life. And indeed I was, because this is the first week in a long time where I've actually had some scheduled coaching calls. And it's, I have to say, I'm really quite satisfied, happy even, that I feel like I'm back in alignment with what my highest and truest purpose is on an individual basis, obviously having individual calls. And Julie and I are going to talk about what I think a lot of you guys are experiencing, but what we're going to share with you are what we see a lot of these top level new elite coaching clients experiencing, as well as what Julie's coaching clients are experiencing. And don't be surprised if we sprinkle in some rando facts about things that have nothing to do with anything too, because it's Friday after all. So Julie, welcome to today's show.
Yes, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. And I wrote down some questions so that they can maybe resonate with some of these new clients. And I'm sure we'll have some stories about some of our longtime existing clients too, because we have quite a mixture now.
Right. Well, so let's talk about, first of all, just so everyone's clear, what elite coaching is. Elite coaching is Julie and I personally being your one-on-one coach. And what elite coaching encompasses isn't just sales skills and all the things you'd expect from a real estate coach. We're also incorporating health, wealth building, a lot of other aspects. Basically, there's 5 areas of life, 5 goals, 5 areas where people set goals. And those are, Julie?
Family, financial, physical, educational, and, religious or spiritual. And we work on all of those. They're not all the same for everybody, but those are the 5 categories.
Right. And so I started out with these calls this week with these new clients, and I asked them, what are the things that are most important to you that you accomplish in the next 90 days? And this is a good way for us to start today, Julie.
Sure.
To a person, I was really surprised I shouldn't say surprised. I guess I was a little, no, I'll say surprised. To a person, none of them had clearly defined goals, and they did not know how to actually state what a goal for them would be in the next 90 days. So in other words, their brains were so and their thinking and their focus was so spread to a million different places that they didn't realize where their focus should be. And I guess that's what really, I wrote this down, Julie, but I also thought about this last night. We could have almost called this coaching program Focus, opposed
Sure.
to Elite, because that's really what it's all about. Focus is follow one course until successful. But right. So when I was asking, what are your 90-day goals? They didn't really have any. They'd say business systems. Okay, what does that mean to you? They would say, I want to work on my CRM. Okay, what does that mean to you? They would say, I want to learn how to list expireds. Well, that's a good one, but what does that actually mean? How in 90
Well,
days?
let me jump in here. So you're saying they had a broad understanding of some things they were interested in pursuing. It wasn't that
Right.
they were goalless and just floating in the wind, but they didn't have really the drill down specific exact path
No, I would
to
say
pursue that.
I would say there were goals floating in the wind.
Really?
I would
Okay.
say with very few exceptions, and I didn't really talk to all of them about, but I'm sure some of them had very specific goals with regards to going to the gym and things like that.
Hmm.
But as far as business goes, they maybe had amoebus goals. None of them
Sure.
had real, for example, if you ask somebody, what's your goal this year for home sales? And they say 100 home sales. And then you ask them, okay, well, why? Well,
Hmm.
tell me the backstory. Why 100 home sales? What is that? I get it. Number 100, great. That's success.
Sounds good.
Right. Sounds good. But why is that important to you? And then they won't have an answer. And so if you don't have an answer why the 100 goal, for example, this is just for example,
Hmm.
is important to you, you won't accomplish it. And oftentimes you'll feel like a failure for not having accomplished it. So what do I mean by that? So if you want to sell 100 homes per year and your average commission is 100,000 or is $10,000, let's say, you're going to earn $1 million, right? So if you knew if you had a financial plan that you had built around what you were going to do with $1 million, obviously you have personal overhead, business overhead, taxes, savings, maybe you're going to pay off some debt, and then you write all those things down. So, and this is just, we're not talking about anything else other than right now, selling 100 homes, earning $1 million. Well, okay, so then let's then break that down and even further. How many units, like how many are going to come from expired? How many are going to come from listings? How many are going to come from buyers? How are we going to break this down? Look at what you've done in the past. And then we keep on drilling down. Then we end up with a plan. So a goal is a dream with an action plan. And what people seem to have is they seem to have dreams that are sort of disguised as goals, but they have no action plan, which is fine. I mean, I'm hoping to help root out of them and co-create with them their plans so they can actually accomplish things. But to a person, Julie, when I was pointing this out on coaching calls, and coaching calls isn't just like a podcast where you're just listening, a coaching call is questions. And I kept on drilling down, asking more questions. Why, explain this. I want to understand, I want to work on my CRM. That was another one I heard a lot. Okay, well, what does that mean? Why do you want to work on your CRM? Well, I heard everyone tell me, and everyone said I need to be dripping on people. I need to be direct mailing them. I need to be social network friending them. I need to do all these things. Right. So why? What's the point? Well, it's because after all, if I have a CRM with, 1,000 people, technically, depending on your market, right, 10% are going to do a transaction with me this year, hypothetically. That's what everyone says. After all, it has to be true. And then, so they're building the CRM on the belief that they have 1,000 people in the CRM, 100 will be viable transactions. And so what they didn't understand and what they don't understand is really, for the most part, most CRMs are built around false hope with no plan. So you think that you're lobbing all these people into this, automated drip campaign, and that somehow magically the 10 people or the 10% of the people in your list are going to raise their hand or respond to an email or call you wanting to do business with you. That's the big lie. And people don't really understand that. So I'm going to tell you guys about a specific couple, and I'm not going to mention any names without their permission.
Mm-hmm.
So these people, there was a couple, and they're just very, very sweet people. And you could tell just by talking to them, they have a great marriage, very nice, Christian-based family. They had raised 6 kids. Their, last kid's almost out the door, the whole thing. They were a little bit younger than Julie and I. They're wanting to really position themselves so the second half of their lives, now that they're kid-free, are going to be even better than the first half. So they need to get their financial house in order. So they had gone to, obviously, I didn't ask them where they got this misinformation, but I can assume they went to a seminar or listened to some Yahoo on YouTube or whatever. And build your CRM, throw as many people in there as possible, drip on people. 10% are going to raise their hand and want to do business with you. And yet these people had built their business and doing very well at it, selling quite a few homes and have a great sale price. They built it based on their own personal contact. So they were making friends and making contacts at church and other places, and then they were dropping them into a digital lead follow-up thing. They just started doing this. I think it was within the last 6 months. And the response that they had from their centers of influence and past clients, the people that had strong relationships with them from all these social reasons primarily, were offended by the digital follow-up. And of course they were. So it was so off-brand. Let's call this couple Bob and Betty. It was so off-brand for this couple, Bob and Betty, to be doing all this highfalutin, impersonal digital follow-up, that they're people so the people felt like, why aren't, I thought we had a better connection, and now you're sending me this generic email, or you're sending me this stupid video. You're sending me these things that are impersonal, that I do not feel like I'm connected with you anymore. And that was the big drop off. And here it is that this couple, Bob and Betty, had all this huge amount of pressure on themselves to build the CRM. That's one of the things they wanted to do in 90 days, but that was absolutely the wrong thing for them to focus on. What they should have been focusing on is acknowledging the fact that a lot of the people in their CRM weren't centers of influence and past clients. They're just general people that they knew, not people or didn't even know. They were just essentially, maybe a list that they loaded in. And so what I put them on was a plan to call every person that they had done a previous deal with on a scheduled basis and reconnect with them on a personal basis, and then start calling those people every 30 to, every month or every other month. And then if you wanted to do the emails in between, which for them, frankly, I think was a mistake because they're too impersonal, But yes, if you want to do the emails in between, that's fine. But the personal connection is what's getting it. Frankly, that's where the money's at right now in this market because everyone else is doing the digital. What are you thinking, Julie?
Well, what I hear you saying is there's actually several different issues that you uncovered. And this speaks to one-on-one coaching. This is something that you discovered through asking lots of questions. So number one is the couple that you're talking about has a robust existing business. You're not talking about how to convert a lead. You're not talking about, they're struggling from month to month. They have a really great, strong existing business that's based on relationships, relationship building, past clients, centers of influence, neighbors, friends, that sort of thing. Okay, so let's just put that as the base. Then the second thing that you said is that maybe they're struggling with the belief. And a lot of agents have this really strong belief that if they just build the CRM to thousands of people, that magic percentage is going to make people come to them versus having to do the outreach yourself. I think that that's the essence of why agents do that, because we all want it to be easier, don't we? Of course you do. We understand that. But that doesn't mean that just the belief and in what people have told you. And you said maybe they heard it from some Yahoo on YouTube or whatever. They probably, like many of our listeners, didn't hear it just one place. There's people trying to sell you robust drip systems everywhere you look. So it'd be easy to believe that. So I think the struggle is the belief that this is going to work if you just dump enough people into it, right?
Well,
and then the third thing, and I'll
sorry.
toss it back to you in a second. The third thing was that existing crowd of people who already know, love, and trust them didn't just ghost them. I mean, there's people that unsubscribe, sure. That would be one thing. You expect some of that when you send a lot of drips, right? It's that they were, in addition to wanting to ghost them and unsubscribe, they were actually kind of offended by it because they were used to more of a really great touch. They wanted that relationship. I think a lot of people crave that relationship. And I also think that everybody living through COVID has exacerbated that. People, really want that more than ever before.
No, I agree. And it's funny, Julie, a lot of these, when you go to a real estate conference,
Yeah.
all these different things, it doesn't matter. When you go for a real estate training, you're going to always find people talking about their CRMs.
Well, sponsored by XYZ CRM company.
That's what I was about to say. And she's right. And so when Julie and we are very honest when people ask us to speak at their event, we're going to tell them, well, I always ask, or our assistant asks, who are your sponsors? It's this company, this company. It's always like the same handful of companies. And I'll say, well, do you realize that Julie's and Tim's message is not in alignment with your sponsors? Because we don't want them to find out when we're on stage that we're telling them the truth about CRMs and have the major sponsor just write a check for 50 grand in the back of the room sweating bullets.
That would be awkward.
We're in somebody else's house and here we are basically crapping on one of their guests. I mean, I'm not going to do that. So we tell them that as a result of that, we don't get invited to those events, which makes sense. I mean, if you're essentially taking the payola from a CRM company to have them speak at your event or have them sponsor your event, you want to keep them happy, right? Sure. Well, we are focused on what the actual output of that is. And the actual output is a lot of agents feeling inadequate unless like part of my having a business is having some big complicated multi-level funnel, Mickey Mouse web of, all this Mickey Mouse. And you think that that's what you're supposed to be spending your time. It's an absolute, look, I cannot summarily say it's a waste of time completely, but it is a waste of time in the sense that you are, and again, this is something for every single one of the ones I spoke with the exception of maybe one person this week, every single one of them had a false sense of belief that those CRMs were going to create leads for them in the future. And as a result of that, they'd given themselves permission to never start or never continue with the real work of real estate with regards to proactive lead generation.
Yes. Okay. So what you're saying is that it's not that we are, quote, against having CRMs or drip systems or whatever. But what we're saying is have it, but it's not a lead generation system. It is not predictable. It is not duplicatable. And one of the issues that I think the fourth thing I was going to say is that they had started to mix their quality past client centers of influence with these random people that were from like circle prospecting or just random contacts versus people who actually would know you if you called, right? So it's that mixture. And people do that, agents do that because they have this belief that they've got to have thousands of people. So I've got to dump every single person I ever meet on the street has got to go into my CRM because maybe someday they're going to transact with me. And that's so speculative versus systematically talking. Like, I think that one of the things that you recommended, maybe you didn't get to this on their call yet, was take maybe you've got 200 core people who would know who you are when you call. In fact, they want to talk to you. Maybe they want to go to coffee with you. You're friends, right? They're very likely to refer business to you. And if you were to take that top 200, not the 2,000 that the 200 are embedded in, but your actual 200 people who know, love, and trust you, and you divide that by, say, 20 work days of every month. You take your weekends out, you've got 20 real work days, and you were to have 10 real conversations every day, you would actually speak with all 200 of those people, speak with, maybe even have coffee with, every 30 days. What would your business look like if you nurtured that group? Now, they can certainly get emails and updates from you and maybe market reports and stuff like that. It's not that we're saying dump your CRM, but be real about where your business actually comes from and don't dilute it with all these messages that kind of piss people off.
I am actually saying dump your CRM. I'm saying use your
Completely,
CRM.
like they should just.
Well, no, well, it's because okay, so what's happened? There's been let me just ask you, Julie.
Sure.
You are on a billion different drip campaigns. You get a
Yep.
billion different texts every day. You get a billion different emails every day. Do you open
Mhm.
any of them? Do you ever read any of them?
Of all of them, maybe 3 to 5 that I actually care about, that I'm consistent
Okay.
about.
All
Yeah.
right. So if you uh and those are coming from companies that you've done business with where you've given them permission to start messaging you and things like that for the most part, right?
Like Housing Wire. I read every time they send me something, I stay updated
Okay.
with them. I'll
So now
open it.
this is where I was going.
Yeah.
Housing Wire is a newsletter.
Yeah.
So this is where the old way of doing digital follow-up with this is the reason I think CRMs have basically been abused. And the reason they've been abused is because they're very profitable for the CRM companies. Because for the most part, if you take the time to set up your CRM, you're not going to cancel it. And you're going to
True.
hold on
You're
to the false.
invested.
Right. You're going to hold on to the false belief that you've got leads hiding within your CRM. The only
Hmm.
way to find out who your leads are within your CRM are to call them and then pull out, obviously, the ones that are going to be the most, just focus on your past clients, your centers of influence and past clients. And if you're a new agent, you still have a viable center of influence that you can put together. If it's all in Premier Coaching, by the way, we go through this exhaustively. Because remember, guys, after 5 years, I think the average agent gets, what was it, 60% of all their
It's like
business
58%. Yeah.
yeah, from centers of influence and past clients. So if you're
Assuming
not
they're talking to them.
exactly talking to them, but I'll tell you what state of the art isn't. State of the art isn't are these emails that you guys are sending through these CRMs. State of the art isn't sending a little silly video that you're sending to a million different people and they can tell. A state of the art isn't a blind offer for a CRM or CMA, those types of things. That's the generic crap that everyone else is doing. And if you think about this, like when Julie and I were selling real estate, CRMs and all these drip campaigns were really starting to build and become in vogue. Well, back then they didn't work very well, but they sure as hell don't work now. If you want to do digital marketing to your center of influence and past client list, what you need to do in this order is you need to go through it, create a list in the first place, but go through your list and really prune out the ones that aren't truly centers of influence and past clients. In other words,
It should be smaller, not bigger.
exactly. You win the game with fewer people that you can give more attention to. You really, really, truly
Mhm.
do. Number two, stop dripping on them because you're offending them. Nobody wants to be dripped on. It is it's so impersonal. It's almost gotten to the point where people are offended by it, like the example I gave you. But you do want to consider forming a newsletter. So a newsletter is like what you guys get when you subscribe to harrisrealestatedaily.com. And in the newsletter, you're not going to be making generic, posts and articles and things like that. You're going to be doing things that are more personal and more focused on your particular clients and how you actually know them. You always have to be offering something of value in your newsletter, but really at the end of the day, a newsletter where you can talk about your recent sold transactions. You can talk about market trends, but the most important thing is they have to opt into the newsletter. So when you guys go to harrisrealestatedaily.com, you're opting into that. You have to double opt into it. I make it a little harder because I only want serious people in our newsletter. We use a service called Beehive to set up our newsletter, and you can get your Beehive newsletter set up by hiring someone from Fiverr or Upwork or something like that. There's lots of people that will do it for you. And then you ask your centers of influence and past clients people when you're calling them to opt into the newsletter. Then what you're doing is they're self-selecting at what level of communication they want to have with you. And you're elevating those relationships to the next level, but that doesn't replace a phone call. Now, as far as phone calls go, in Premier Coaching, and obviously if you're an elite coaching client, we give you a specific schedule of what you should be saying to all these guys once a month. And it's very simple. We want you simply, hey, Julie, this is Tim Harris with eXp Realty. So listen, do you have a second for me? I got some really great news for you.
Sure.
Well, great news is since, and let's just say this is your initial call. So, by the way,
Mhm.
if you haven't called any of them in a long time, don't worry about it. They're not keeping track that you haven't called them in a long time, right?
No.
So, I got some great news for you. In the last 12 months, your home has actually increased in value. Don't say percent. Nobody but real estate agents think in terms of percent. Say dollar amount. So you
Mhm.
paid 425 or 4 point million, whatever, 4.25 million, whatever. And in that time, your home has increased in value by $50,000 on the low end or 400,000 on the high end. So congratulations, you buying that house was a real home run for you. And I just wanted to call and let you know because I figured that would, make your day.
That's awesome news. Good to hear
Yeah.
from you.
Yeah, but would you like me to do more in-depth CMA for you and email it to you? A CMA is like an appraisal, and I can just email it over to you. I've actually already started on it.
Yeah, sure. I'd be interested in what's sold that's making you call me like this and tell me that my house has gone up in value. Sure, that'd be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so give me a day or so, and I'll get it over to you. Have you made any changes or anything to the property since you purchased it, so I make sure it's accurate?
No, we're really still unpacking our boxes.
Oh, okay. Got it. So, by the way, before I let you go, do you know of anyone that's thinking about buying or selling that I should also be helping in this market?
Well, I mean, I've heard that a division of my company might get some relocation going on. I don't have anything specific yet, but perhaps.
There you go. That's the call. And you could do variations on that. So
Mhm.
the call the following month is, did you get, I can send you an updated one. Did you review so, okay, let me preface that. So they say yes to the CMA. You go ahead and do the CMA for them, and probably well, maybe only 10% will say yes to the
Yeah.
CMA. And even if they aren't even if they don't seem like they're thinking about selling, if somebody wants a more in-depth study of their home's value, there's probably a good probability they're thinking about selling. So just keep
Mhm.
that in the back of your mind. So after you send them the CMA, then you want to call them in a few days. Don't email or text them or do any of this lazy crap. Call them and go over the CMA with them and ask them if they had any questions. And then you can slip into the conversation. Were you guys thinking about selling? Just ask them straight up and see what they have to say. But that's what you should be doing with your centers of influence and past clients, in addition to the newsletter. And if you make your newsletter fun, you'll have a lot of people giving you a really great response. And Julie, I want you to tell them about Asher House. It's that
Mm.
the charity. So Julie's, we're involved in a charity, and without going into the buy or sell with me, that's too complicated. But just
Sure.
explain to them how they might be able to use Asher House as something that they could write about consistently in their newsletter, which would have an appeal to everybody.
Sure. Well, it's a rescue house, kind of a pet charity. They started out with dogs. Now they've got pigs and all kinds of different things. They have a whole house devoted to cats. It's actually, there's a gym and the cats live in the gym. It's crazy. You can see them online, but that's something that I'm interested in. And, there's lots of different ways to work your charities into your calls. One of my one-on-one clients, Tim, for example, since we're talking, I mean, that's the pet charities are close to my heart and many of our coaching clients too. But one of my one-on-one coaching clients up in Canada, he uses his charity work through his church, and he does like the mayor's prayer charity. He does his outreach to his past clients, his database, his top, I think for him it's more like 400 people. He calls them and invites them to his charity events. So he starts out with something that he's very passionate and interested in. That makes the call super easy. He wants them to come and support that. And then that turns into, by the way, who else do you know who could use my help buying or selling real estate?
But this is really good stuff to be putting into your newsletter. And you could put in,
Yes,
what
that's
we're
right.
talking about. So you're wondering, well,
Promotions and things like that.
I'm going to do this newsletter. How am I going to go about putting it together? You can delegate it. I just told you ways to do it. Just make sure it doesn't sound like some AI thing wrote it, and make it personal. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Mhm.
And a matter of fact, imperfection right now. This is the reason Julie and I don't sweat basically being in a studio when we do our podcast, because it's fascinating. Over the last 5 years, really, the less perfect something is, the more trustworthy people find it. I don't know if you guys
More
have noticed that
authentic.
too.
Yeah.
Right. So the a lot of the Tucker Carlsons and all these other people that were on normal news channels, and they start doing their podcasts again. The ones that find themselves sitting trying to emulate where they were doing when they were on cable TV, those shows aren't doing very well at all. Like
No.
a lot of these CNN people are trying to start podcasts. They're trying to keep that whole vibe the same.
Too stuffy and weird.
Well, more than that, Julie, the podcast consumer wants something that's more informal and imperfect so they feel like they're participating in the conversation with you, not just being puked upon with your opinions and all the rest of it.
Yes,
And
and related to that, you mentioned AI, and we're big fans of AI. There's a lot of different places in your business and your personal life that you can utilize AI. But so far in our experience, I think you'll agree with it. I don't know if you've got feedback from your clients yet on this, but I certainly do. The place that AI is not doing so well is in these automated follow-ups, like chatbot follow-ups on your website, on AI generated newsletter stuff, AI generated drip systems. People can tell that it's not you because it doesn't sound like you, especially the ones where you launch it, you set it and forget it, and you figure, well, that's being done for me in the background. I never have to think about it again. To your point, Tim, people do want more interaction. They want it to be personal. So don't get stuck. If you're putting together your newsletter, it needs to sound like you. They transacted with you because they like you. They trust you. They're going to send referrals to you because it's you. So don't overly impersonalize it in the pursuit of automation. Does that make sense? I mean, don't
totally.
overcomplicate it.
Yeah. And so what you all should be experiencing right now is a sense of relief because we're telling you that you're making your freaking real estate business too hard.
Yes,
You're
that's
making
right.
you're making it too difficult because you're being manipulated by people that A, have never sold real estate before, and B, want you to buy their little digital widgets so they can make recurring revenue off of you.
And they know you want an easy button.
Exactly. And they know many of you are, overly self-conscious about calling people, let alone being perceived as a salesperson. We're not asking you to do anything that's going to compromise anything. We're wanting you to take your relationships to the next level with all of these, all your centers of influence and past clients. So I'm going to share with you something else, Julie, that I experienced when I was on these calls.
Sure.
I was asking these folks what going back to my original point, what their 90-day goals were.
Mhm.
And without having without betraying any of the calls I was having, again, I was really surprised how few of them were able to think with clarity about really what a 90-day goal should be. But when I did break it down for them and we created an action plan behind it, the sense of relief, and I've had so many coaching calls. I've had well over 100,000 one-on-one coaching calls, and I can hear in people's voices when there's a slight inflection change, anything. It could be their how fast they're talking, slow they're talking, the pitch in their voice, the whole thing. And so where I know I'm on track with people is when I'm on a call, almost everyone comes to a coaching call and they're coming from a heightened state of stress, really. Maybe it's the day, maybe, whatever is going on
Sure.
in their lives. At the end of the coaching call, what I'm monitoring is how they're receiving and responding to the questions I'm asking them. And then I
Mhm.
ask them, so what was, I don't do this every time, but I'll ask them, what was the best thing about this coaching call? And sometimes they'll say, well, you answered my question about this or whatever. But almost always they say, because I feel like I have a sense of direction and I feel like I have a sense of calm. And that's
Mhm.
something that I'm not giving to them. Well, all I'm doing is leading them back to where on the path that they're supposed to be
You're
on.
taking them back to center of which is where they wanted to be, and you're eliminating distractions. You're
Exactly. And
like
that's
the
what's
cloud to the thinking.
It exactly. The noise in our lives right now, collectively, especially real estate agents, is just obscene. You have to be such a really diligent pruner of who you listen to and what you allow in your head, truly more so now than ever, because there is so much noise. You have to give
Mhm.
yourself permission just to literally, almost live in your little cave and just focus on the 5 or 6 things that you're supposed to be doing at a high level every day. And really, like Julie and I don't watch the news. We don't. We haven't watched the news in forever. We
I
just
don't
don't
even know
even.
how to find it really.
We don't even have
Where'd it
TVs.
go?
I mean, we have TVs for watching movies at night. That's the extent of it.
Yeah.
Zoe's never had to really watch TV ever, and she's almost 12, right? Hopefully, there won't be any prices to be paid for that. She's not going to go on a TV binge when she's 18 and not come out of her room for 10 years. But
Hope
I mean,
not.
the reality of it is that we don't want external things. As strong as we think our mindset is, we know that we're just as susceptible as everyone else is to all the tried and true
Sure.
ways of manipulating people, which is through fear. So if we block all of those outside dissenting voices from our minds, we actually, and you will as well, get a lot more done a lot quicker. The challenge is giving yourself permission to go media free. The challenge is giving yourself permission to prune the people in your life that are holding you down, keeping you complacent, pulling you down, and you've got to cut the ties with all those people and go to the next level. And that's what I'm doing. Really, that's in my mind what I'm doing with a lot of these elite coaching clients. But when it comes to the 90-day goals, when you think about 90-day goals versus I have a 5-year plan or a 12-month plan or whatever it is, those things hardly ever happen unless you have short-term measurable goals that you can see yourself working against. So the question I'd ask all these guys are, so, again, they're struggling with what a 90-day goal is. I'm not trying to be condescending when I'm saying that. That's actually a struggle. If I asked you, dear listener, what are your 90-day goals? Could you actually tell me? Like, say, for example, could you say in the next, let's just keep it in physical, for example, in 90 days, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Okay. How are you going to do it? Well,
Well, they might not even say 10 pounds. They would say, I need to lose weight.
exactly. Even worse, right? And then you ask them how they're going to go about doing it. They don't actually have a plan. Well, then let's make a plan. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to hire a trainer. You're going to go to Orange Theory. You're going to go Monday,
This
Wednesday,
is going to
Friday.
be the schedule of your workouts.
Exactly. And then maybe you're going to hit the semi-glutide. Maybe you're going to this, the other thing. And we're going to create an actual plan. Then we're going to put the plan in place. So you need to go to just Orange Theory. You need to go to the Orange Theory, sign up and schedule your workout days and pre-schedule them for the next 90 days. Then you need to text
and prepay
me.
for it so you'll actually do it.
Yeah. Well, some of these clients I've got, Julie, have a lot of money, so they would prepay and not go. So
Maybe they need to prepay like 3 or 4 years. I don't know.
So here's the next level is they have to text me when they arrive at the Orange Theory and text me with taking a picture of the Orange Theory. And they have to text me a screenshot of themselves.
Oh, no, now you're talking about accountability. You better watch yourself. Yeah.
See, that's the difference. That's what elite coaching is. So when you say you want to accomplish a goal of losing 10 pounds in the next 90 days, I'm sorry, you're probably not going to do it because you, A, don't have an action plan, and B, you don't have anyone holding you accountable to it. Julie and I, we are avid worker-outers, and we definitely go after each other to stay in good shape. That's one of the ways we motivate each other is through antagonism when it comes to working out. But even she and I, we need outside influence because we become complacent too. So everybody at all stages in their lives, when they want to improve, you have to seek the advice, the counsel, the coaching of somebody who's not just the next level up from you, but 20 levels up from you, because then they'll pull you up and you're going to have to pay for it. People like that, generally speaking, are going to be very expensive, but worthwhile.
Well, you have to choose well, and that sometimes does come with a higher price tag because let's be honest, we can all go to YouTube and look at, a snippet of a workout and say, I'm going to use that today. I'm going to work out. That's different than having a high level of commitment with accountability and an actual plan. And it's interesting that you pull out as one of our topics today, the 90-day plan. Our coaching clients that have figured out how to embrace the 90-day plan, we actually have a plan called the 90-day massive action plan. That oftentimes is based on a larger plan, maybe the 12-month plan, but 12 months is so, it's so far out there. It would be easy to say, well, I've still got 6 months to accomplish that goal. But when you say, I've only got 90 days to accomplish that goal, that's a completely different level of commitment that's in a smaller time frame that you can concentrate on. And because it also brings you faster results because you're embracing it, you're like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this 90-day plan, that means I got to do this, this, and this week. Not I can procrastinate it for 6 months from now because it's a 12-month plan. Or worse, sometimes we have clients come to us that have like this big elaborate 5-year plan. You're going to be a totally different person in 5 years. So shrink it down, have some accountability. And the good thing about that, the clients that embrace that, they see effort equals results so much faster than somebody who's like got this big elaborate, Swiss Army knife of things that they've put together that aren't really that drilled down. So I'm a big fan of the 90-day plan. And then it's not just doing that 90 days, you accomplish those things and you have the next 90-day plan. And pretty soon you've had 4 quarters of production instead of 1 quarter where you push really hard because you're panicking because you're running out of time.
Well, so to a person, they all wanted to have, well, I wrote this down. This was involuntary. They all have to have within the next 30 days, really ideally within the next 2 weeks, have their pre-listing packs done, have their buyer appointments packed done. They have to have the ethical real estate professional core stuff all
100%.
in place. And they have to have all that in place so that they then can accomplish what everyone also had as a goal is they wanted to learn how to be a proactive lead generator. So this is the other thing, Julie, I found really fascinating. To a person, all of them, and they were embarrassed, which I was proud of them for all being embarrassed. They had been lead buyers.
Well, they were transparent with you and you're proud of them for being honest. And I call that the coaching confessional.
Exactly. The coaching confessional, but they didn't come out with it. I had to ask them. It was so funny. They were trying to move me around. So how many deals have you done in the last 12 months? Well, I've done 80 deals. All right. How many of those were buyers versus sellers? Well, it was probably 50-50, right? So where did those buyer leads come from? Well, a lot of them came from my listings. Well, and I kept on asking, and then you'll find out that they're, paying for buyer leads, and the listing leads were all coming from centers of influence and past clients, but for some reason they're buying these buyer leads. So how many buyer leads are you generating, or how many leads are you generating off your listings? Well, I'm not really generating any. How do you do that? Well, let me ask you this. When I see your sign, how many phone numbers are on your sign? Well, let's see. There's my broker's phone number, my cell phone number, and a whole bunch of others. So your
QR
sign,
code.
right. Your sign's a bunch of noise that basically are people confused about. So if I wanted to do a search for you, or I'm wanting to know about that new listing at 123 Elm Street, and I went on Google or somewhere other place, what's my experience like? Well, what do you mean? What is your experience like? Well, how hard is it for me to find you, Mr. Listing Agent, if I go online? Well, I've never done that before. Well, let's do it now. Put in one of your addresses of one of your listings, and let's see how easy it is to find your information. Well, I can't find it. All right. So in other words, the reason you're not getting any leads is from your listings is because you're not putting a system in place to actually get leads. You're relying on the system that's in place from Realtor.com, from Zillow, and all these other portals, and they make money off taking your leads and then stealing. There it is, your buyer leads, and then selling them to other agents. And you're not building a system around blocking them from doing that. I mean, that's what Compass is basically doing with their off-market stuff. A lot of other brokerages are doing the same thing. And so there's a specific way that you can essentially bypass losing your buyer leads, and it really doesn't cost you anything. And we talked a lot about that. And so that's what you guys need to start thinking about. I'll give you guys a real quick snippet of, hold on, Julie. I'll give you guys a real quick snippet of what, for example, would be. So if you have a new listing at 123 Elm Street, go do a video of 123 Elm Street. It does not have to be fancy. You do not have to spend $1 billion with the millennial who charges you $2,000 to a fancy ass video. Now, if it's more expensive and you had to use that as a listing tool, the fancy video, then go for it. You've already obligated yourself. But for the most part, what you're wanting to do is then take a video, and then in the title of the video, at the top, right, the title, you need to put the address of the property, and you need to put the subdivision of the property and the MLS number. So, 123 123 Oak Street subdivision, MLS number, whatever. Not a fancy AI written, blah, 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 lovely 3-bedroom. No. You need to put the pertinent information, because that's what's going to be searched. And then I want you guys to go and test this. Do that for all of your listings, and then put the little video up, put it on YouTube, put it on Instagram, but YouTube primarily. Do a long form video, do a short form video, because between Instagram, the short form, and the long form, that's 3 separate videos that all are going to be essentially indexed into Google. And then in the description of here's the video, here's the description. Again, repeat the address and the MLS number, and then put your information in. On YouTube, you can do hypertext links out of YouTube directly to your website, but don't do that. Don't try to funnel them. Do not do this funneling crap anymore, guys. The smartest, most successful salespeople, not just real estate agents now, are moving away from any sort of funnelization or digital lead follow-up. They're doing the actual calls themselves, and they're doing high-level pre-qualification, and they're personally pulling out the best leads. And that's the reason right now you're seeing a massive bifurcation. One of the many reasons in the real estate industry is because the agents that are doing the real work of real estate, asking the real questions, figuring out which ones are the real leads, are the ones making all the real money. So point of it is that when you put all these things back into the video form and you put them online, and someone goes to their phone, because most searches for real estate are done on the phone. You guys should experience this yourselves. Go to Google on your phone, use Chrome, doesn't matter. And then I want you to put in a property address of a home for sale, and you're going to see the videos come up first. Why? Because Google owns YouTube, right? That's why. And so when Google owns YouTube, like I mentioned Instagram before, Instagram's owned by Facebook. So I guess if you only were to do one thing, it would be put it on YouTube, but do a long form and a short form. Whether you put it on Instagram matters less. I made a mistake when I said that, because Instagram, generally speaking, does not get, the individual videos aren't getting indexed. It'll just show your Instagram page. But when you do it, what I just suggested around YouTube, the videos are getting indexed. So when you do a search 123 Elm Street or Oak Street, you're going to see the actual videos are going to show up after the paid sponsored ads. And that's gold. And now the long tail benefit of that. So you've done this for all of your listings. You've done this over the next 12 months. Now you're going to have all of these properties that are forever going to be indexed on Google, searchable through AI because you put the address on there, because you put the MLS number in there, that when people are doing a research on, the Oakhurst subdivision or whatever it is, they're going to find that video and they're then going to find your contact information. And all of what I just described to you costs you nothing. Julie?
Well, so what you're highlighting here is that most agents, I can kind of see why, because we went through so many years of houses basically selling themselves due to lack of inventory and what have you. A lot of agents never learned to optimize the advantage that you have of being a listing agent. Even if you only have 3 or 4 listings, even really when you have one listing, to use that as a free lead generator. Everything that Tim just described, as he said, is free and easy to do. You don't need fancy videography. You don't need AI to make all of your descriptions. You need to follow exactly what he just said. Now, the second part of that, I think many agents haven't done this because they figure, well, why do I want more buyer leads anyway? I've got plenty of buyers, blah, blah, blah. It's because those buyer leads are also seller leads, and sellers generate more everything. Buyers don't generate. You have buyers in your pipeline right now who are not even buyers. They're not going to buy. They might not even be qualified to buy or motivated.
But Julie,
it's taking advantage of being a listing agent and optimizing those listings.
all right, sorry for interrupting you, but drill down on what you just said, because that's gold, what you just said. And this is really the essence of it. You have to be proactive about everything you're doing in life right now because life's moving way too fast, certainly faster than I could ever remember in my lifetime. So you have to be realizing, especially if you're, depending what your price point is, that most of your buyer leads are actually listings. And so most of your sellers are
There was a stat that came back out. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that I read this last week. It's like 73% of buyers are also sellers. Or you could look at it the other way, 73% of sellers are also going to be buyers, because not everybody's going to be a first-time buyer. And in fact, the first-time buyer pool is dwindling. So almost all of your leads are listing leads. You just don't, it's a listing lead in buyer's clothing.
Well, exactly. So you are not, so what's happening? Most typical agents are buying their leads because they don't know how to, even if they're listing agents, let's say they are good at working their centers of influence and past clients. They are good at expireds, but they're not pulling enough buyer leads off their listings because the buyer leads are in essence being redirected or stolen from them. So you need to get them back by taking control of them. We just gave you one of the many ways that you can go about doing that. There's a lot of statistics and a lot of research that's been done on what I'm about to tell you. For every one listing, you're going to generate at least 7 other, you can call it transactions or transaction possibilities. Why? And this is only if you work it. It's not just going to happen automatically.
The listing existing on its own does not create the business. You have to work the listing. This is an example of where you do need a system, where you do need to have a new listing launch system where you go through your checklist and you do A, B, C, D, and E every single time. You do the videos. Yes, have a home brochure, for example, out by the street. You have lots of different ways to lead capture. And when you do an open house, you have a system behind that. So all of these things work in conjunction to make you what I call a self-generation machine, which costs you nothing. You're not paying referral fees on any of this, for example.
And so I realize what we're telling you sounds almost overly simple, and it's in complete contrast to what you're hearing from it's in complete contrast to what everyone else is telling you. It's because everyone else is trying to sell you their widget. And we have no widget to sell. So we're going to tell you the truth. If you want to understand, follow the incentives and you'll understand what people's motivation is at the end of the day. You all know that intuitively. So for example, 800homehotline.com. It's $34 a month. You put an 800homehotline.com writer on all of your signs. Oh, and some of you guys are a little tech savvy. You'll know that it's IVR, interactive voice response technology, which has been around forever. What it is basically, it's a sign writer so your sign itself has to have virtually no noise on it, and all roads need to lead to your 800homehotline.com sign writer.
Which, let me just pause, goes to you, not anyone else, not your broker, nobody. You are capturing that lead.
Right. So when people call, it says for free 24-hour record info on this house, call 1-800-555-1212. And each listing has an individual extension. So when you do that, here's what you're going to get. When you put the sign in the yard, honestly, I feel emotional even saying this because some of the biggest deals that Julie and I ever did was from exactly what I'm describing to you. So when you put a sign, and some of our coaching clients too, when you put the sign in the yard for the first time, and it's like say, the neighbors, the first people that are going to call your 800 home hotline number are going to be the neighbors. People are going to call because it's free 24-hour recorded information. Now, there is an option that they can have the digital pictures and information texted to them, but all you're wanting to have them do is call. So if you have like an EXP Realty sign and it's a beautiful, well-designed sign, you got to make the writer so that it's large and in charge, depending on what your state laws are. I'm talking fluorescent green, ugly as hell, with black writing on it, because that's where you want people to call. And they got to be real clear that that's what they're supposed to be focused on. So the first folks that call are going to be the neighbors. And a lot of those neighbors are going to be the ones that are thinking about putting their homes for sale. And so that's going to be a great source for you. But the other thing is you have to realize that the best buyers are the ones that are driving the neighborhoods on the weekends, calling off the signs. They're the ones that have already decided they want to live in Smithville. They want to live in Oakhurst subdivision, and they're driving around, and they've been conditioned now to realize that the new listings aren't on the MLS. They're now having to drive the neighborhoods looking for the new signs. And if you have 800homehotline.com on your signs, you're going to get the best potential listing leads of the neighbors, and you're going to get the best potential buyer leads. And look, we can go on, but anything now that is going to put any kind of buffer between you and your prospective client is costing you money. And that is not what consumers want, especially if you're dealing with high end. If you're dealing with a high-end customer and you think you're going to funnel them, I guarantee you're going to lose. Every single, I can't even say it any more clearly than that. If you're wanting to do business with high-end customers and they're used to doing business with Hermes and Ferrari and Rolls-Royce and going to Ritz-Carlton and doing all these other things in their lives, I promise you, they will drop you like a hot bag of dog poo if you're trying to funnel them in any way. They want to hear from you. You have to call them. That is the new world. It is the antithesis, the opposite of what 99% of the agents are doing out there, which is the reason that fewer agents are making more money. Julie?
Well, it's also the reason, and I absolutely see this as a trend. It is why the listing agents are pulling so far away from any agents that are dependent on buyers. And you throw this little thing called the commission sharing lawsuit out there, where there are buyers that are going directly to listing agents, but are you listing agents capturing those leads? You know, that's why open houses are so hot right now, is because buyers are going direct. So all of these things come together. I think what I hear you saying, and what our conversation is largely about coaching clients, both old and new, is the simplification of the business.
Right.
It's not doing more things. It's not adding on. It's not polluting your day with all this busy work and work theater. It's the simplification of what you do well. And most of the clients that come to us are already doing a lot of things right and a lot of things well. It's doing more of that, simplifying and taking all of this pollution and all of this chaos out of your lives so that you have a very specific schedule that is based on dollar productive activity and is not filling every single moment of your day with busy work. We also, one of our North Stars, I think you'll agree with this, Tim, as coaches, is we also want you to have a life, especially those of you who have already figured out the mousetrap. And it's not necessarily about doing deal after deal after deal and being in that hamster wheel. We want you to do fewer things, but more focused things. It's like the agents that say, well, I made 100 contacts today, but they were all circle prospecting. It doesn't really matter that you made 100 prospects today. You're not talking to people who are going to transact. Go you for being over your phone fear. But now let's get fewer things going on, not more. Fewer, more focused. You said it earlier, follow one course until successful. And I think that things have gotten really out of control with all of the stuff that people are selling you guys and trying to get you to believe in and do the easy button so that you'll never, I mean, they lead with that, never cold call again. But agents don't realize what the definition of cold calling even is, right?
We don't tell people to cold call either. Cold calling is a waste of time.
Exactly.
Yeah, cold calling's stupid.
It is stupid. And that's like circle prospecting. You're talking to people who we have no belief that they're ever going to do anything.
It's just a waste.
Yeah.
I know you hear these stories about people that knock on cold doors and all the rest of it. And if you're brand new and you're wanting to basically, you know what, screw that. Don't do it, period. Because right, in most markets, you can just be calling expireds. You can actually be calling the people that already have their hands in the air and already have, a need to sell a home. Those are, for example, or the notice defaults in some markets, or the probate listings or the for sale by owners, all the other sources we can really
People
focus
who
on.
obviously have a need for what it is that you do.
And so I'm going to say this too, Julie. That was the other recurring theme. So I had a lot of people that were really wanting a lot of clarity on everything we've talked about. I've had 2 new elite coaching clients that are frustrated as hell that they can't drive profit out of their teams. And
Yes.
they followed the wrong course until unsuccessful with regards to building teams. And so that is something I know a lot of people have a lot of emotion and ego wrapped up on, because after all, you're Bob and Betty Smith and you have this big real estate team. But if you actually do the math on it, well, I always start out with the question, why did you get into real estate originally? And they usually have some pretty precise information. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to, have control of my schedule. Okay, well, you did all that. So did you ever have any financial ambitions? Did you expect to be in the business for 20 years and basically running what it amounts to an elaborate adult daycare where, where you're constantly feeding all these pissed off, hangry birds leads, and, you're doing the math at the end of the month and your accountant's kind of nudging you. You're not making any profit, or realizing that the only real profit you make is off the listing side. These types of questions are what people.
So in other words, that was not the goal that you had when you got into it.
Exactly. And so you ask them what the goal was, and they say, well, Tim, I heard you say on the podcast, a lot of these guys are longtime podcast listeners, my new elites. And they'll say, well, I heard you say that rich is where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. And they'll say, I never really thought about that. Okay, so let's talk about that. And then, now I'm going to meander into talking about money and financial planning, but that's the other part of it. If an elite coaching client will allow us, we also want you to set up monarchmoney.com accounts, which is essentially a net worth tracker. And it tracks all your expenses. You patch in all your checking accounts and your credit card accounts. And then as an elite level coach, we want to see that information so we can actually police it for you to make it so that you are not wasting money anywhere. You will waste money everywhere you can possibly imagine without knowing it, because you're not holding that expense accountable. You're doing things in your business without realizing that it's stupid, a waste of money, and you could be putting that money to nothing else other than investing it in the S&P 500 or paying off debt. But you've normalized it. After all, you went to a conference and everyone on the stage is bragging about having 20 million people in their CRMs, and that must be what I'm supposed to do. But what they didn't tell you is that all their business comes from their centers of influence and past clients. And from the CRM, they get virtually nothing, right? They're not telling, oh, what about the social media marketing guy? So-and-so said they get all their first-time buyer leads off of Facebook. Well, what they're not also telling you is they do things at the gym and they do all these other things. And the people that are in Facebook are also the same people they're coming in contact with on a regular basis. And what the people are doing is just messaging them through Facebook, but the real contact and relationship was formed not through Facebook. So they're telling you all this stuff, but you guys aren't asking drilled down enough questions. And so when it comes to, for example, Monarch, that's something else. It's because I want for all of you guys, oftentimes, well, I'll say for the ones I've taken, the new elites I took on this past week, they were all really adamant about wanting to be rich where their money works for them, and they no longer have to work for their money. But I'll suggest that most of you listening are not actually to that point yet, because most of you have to make a decision in life, in business, but in life. Would you rather be rich or would you rather be famous? I want you to think about that. You can't be both. Because, by the way, you can't be both. Not really. So if you'd rather be rich or would you rather be famous? Choose. What would you rather be? If you're in your 20s or younger, you're going to choose without actually saying it. Most of you are going to, the reality of it is you're going to say, well, I'd rather be rich. That's what you'll say. But then if we look to see where you're spending your money, because that tells the truth, we're going to see you're basically spending your money on to be famous. You're doing marketing, you're doing branding, and you're doing this and doing the other thing because you're trying to let the world know that you're successful, that you're famous, and that you're an influence and all the rest of it. But the older you get, the more you will wish you chose to be rich, because that will have meant you would have made less decisions around your ego and looking for acceptance from strangers when you were younger, and more time spent being considerate of your money and putting it in places where it allow it to grow. Well, introducing Elite Coaching and Tim and Julie Harris as your private coaches. And when that happens, and you allow us to have some sort of oversight of your finances through Monarch Money, for example, costs you nothing, by the way, we're going to monitor all of that for you on a regular basis. And we're going to hold you accountable. We're going to put systems in place. The system that you co-create with us will force you to save I will actually build for you the actual plan for the next, 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. I'm working on somebody's plan right now for the next 10 years. So I'm going to show them how they can have a net worth of, I won't say the amount, within the next 10 years if they save this amount of money, all things considered, personal overhead, taxes, all things considered, how they can actually build up to having this amount of net worth, the whole thing. And from that net worth, then they can essentially make this much money passively. You guys get it? So we're not just teaching you sales skills, or certainly not going to be wasting a lot of time on marketing and branding. What we're focusing on is you becoming the best version of you, and you're hiring folks, Julie and I, and really all of our coaches as well, because not everyone's a good fit for Julie and I. When you message me about being in Julie and I's schedule, and you can text me directly if this is of interest to you at 512-758-0206. And look, I only want 10 clients. I already have 10 clients. I haven't even checked. I didn't check our assistants and ask them, is my schedule full? But irregardless, just go ahead and text me directly did I say that right? Irregardless or regardless? Regardless.
It's okay.
Yeah. I think irregardless is redundant.
Get some bonus
right?
letters in there, but it's good.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. Text me at 512-758-0206. And do text me with information about yourself. And what we're looking for is people that are, look, if you've listened to our podcast for a long period of time, you know what Julie and I's jib jab is. You know who we are. You know what we're all about. And you're going to get the same thing on technical with way more amplitude, right? As a one-on-one coach. Go ahead.
Yes. And I just want to point out that, yes, we absolutely do coach couples. We do coach teams, team leaders. We've got a couple of people who are transitioning out of like executive roles, doing something else. Normally we have like agents that are at a certain point and we're taking, everything we talked about today. But some of you are getting out of some kind of executive role and have other skills, and that's fine. That's the profile, is somebody who wants to be the best person that they can be. And it's not just about sales skills. Remember, at the top of the pod, we talked about 5 areas of life. This is about the deep dive and the optimization of all of those things. We didn't have a chance to talk about some of the health stuff that we help you guys with, but we did do a podcast about a week ago where we did a drill down on health, because that's also physical, that ties into the physical goal. So if these things are exciting to you and you want that for yourself, we can help you get there faster. That's why people invest in coaching.
But really, Julie mentioned the health thing. It's one of my favorite topics because it's had the most profound impact on Julie and I personally. Mm-hmm. And a lot of you listening, I noticed that probably a good bit of the people that signed on with me to be elite coaching clients were I had a couple that are in their 30s, but most of them are in their 40s and 50s. That's what I'm attracting. Yeah. And to one person, which I was really glad to hear, was on HRT. And he talked to me about his before and after experience. And so this is one of the things, for example, Julie and I, we're going to write a book on taking care of your body as you age. We didn't even have a title for it. And we got into it and we realized that we weren't qualified to really write the book because it would have required so much more in-depth knowledge than what we were willing to take the time to learn. So instead, what we did is we just created a plan for ourselves and then we implemented it probably about 12 years ago in earnest. Mm-hmm. We'd always worked out and done some things, but starting about 12 years ago is really when we drilled down on it when we were earlier in our early 40s. And that included obviously the physical working out and then the low carb and the HRT. But since then, in the last 12 years, the advancement in peptides, advancement in different health stuff has it's outpaced virtually all of our preconceived beliefs about getting older. That's what I'm trying to say. Is right now, the U.S. healthcare system, really the global healthcare system, is not designed. And Julie, I know I have already messaged them. They know I'm late. Okay.
Just checking.
I know I saw you typing away. It's not designed around being proactive. It's around being reactive to health problems. And
treating what sneaks up on you instead of preventing it from sneaking up in the first place.
Exactly. And so I don't want anything sneaking up on me, and I don't want anything sneaking up on all of you. So look, in the last 24 months, there's 2 companies now that'll do full body scans, MRI scans. And we use a company called per nouveau. Yeah, I said it right.
You did it. Yeah.
Okay. And then there's a lot of labs out there now that for a relatively affordable price, you can do labs every 6 months and you can look for early indicators in your blood and early indicators from scans and you do all this stuff. Well, okay. So if you're in the back of your mind believing that your lifespan is only going to be until you're like, say you're, 55 and your grandpa only lived until he was 75 and all the rest of it. Well, you can actually do things now that he couldn't do, that you couldn't have done 10 years ago to actually head off any of the potential problems health-wise that you might actually be having. So what if right now we're all, because we are, at the foothills of what's going to be massive increase in the longevity of the lifespans of all of us. And so there was, and you guys look for this, you'll find it. There is a widely held belief by some of the leading researchers that in 5, and some of them are saying 10 years, that assuming you have a healthy body in 5 to 10 years, even if you don't, you're going to have different, different systems and different things that are going to help you, really there's going to be a cure for virtually all the major elements, major things that adversely affect people because of the advancements that are happening with medicine and AI. I don't want to sound like a technologist because I'm not, but here's the truth, or here's what they're all saying, is that in 5 years, maybe 10 years, that you will be able to do certain, you'll be able to take care of your body in such a way, simplifying it, that you'll essentially be aging. You won't get any older. So in 10 years, you might be 50, but if you start taking care of yourself now, so you're in really good shape in 10 years, in 5 years, let's say, or 10 years from now, when all these different therapies and medical things are in place, you're going to stay at 50. But if you happen to look younger than that because you kept good care of your body, you're going to age slower. So the different podcasts and things and doctors I've talked to when Julie and I were trying to put together that book, which we're guessing, they're saying, so for every year right now, you age a year, right? I'm 50, I'm going to be 51, blah, 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 blah. Well, so for every year now that you get older going forward, what they're essentially say is you're going to stay in place, or in some cases, you can actually reverse. I don't know if you hear that pinging. That is obnoxious. That's my calendar. You can actually reverse essentially getting older. Now, that means numeric, people say age doesn't matter. The number doesn't matter. Well, in the very near future, it literally won't matter, but you got to take care of yourself now. That's the backbone for what we're prescribing for most of our coaching clients. And so what we do is we're taking, again, this is not for everybody. It just depends whether they want to go down that road with us or not, is I'm going to ask you to go and have the body scan. I'm going to ask you to go and have the blood work done. I'm going to ask you to go and do all these medical things. None of them cost a lot of money. None of them are a big pain in the butt. And then you're going to be working with doctors, not with Julie and I, we're not physicians, and they're going to be essentially helping you translate and understand what you should be putting in place to, obviously increase your longevity. But remember what I told you, in 5 years, or on the outside, maybe 10 years, we're going to have this major revelation in healthcare that's going to cause all of us to potentially live. Like, again, your mental expectation is I'm going to live till I'm 75 or I'm 85. You might subconsciously think that based on the age, the timelines of your family members. But I'm here to tell you that all might be completely out the window, and your new timeline for you and for everyone in your family might be 10% more, might be 20% more. You might be the new normal. I think the average American man lives to almost 80 or something, 76 or something. What if the new normal is living to 105?
But not just that, but because people would argue with you and say, well, the last 10 years kind of suck anyway. Why would I want to live to be 110? It's how you feel at that age. You might feel like you're 35 when you're 50. You might feel like you're, 50 when you're 80. That's the difference is there's all these studies that are saying, what is your actual body health based on the different things that you can do? Lots of different studies on this, where your numeric age might be this, but your body is functioning as if it's actually 10 years younger. So all the ways that we think about this is changing as well. And this is something that we're very interested in and we share with our coaching clients. So that all goes into being the best you that you can be. A lot of you guys listening work your butts off in your real estate practice, and you have a lot of things to show for that. But why not make it even better when as you age and you're buying more time to enjoy the fruits of your labor? That's what we want for you.
Well, Julia, everything changes if you restructure your mental timeline. So right now, if you're listening and you're 45 and you believe that you're only going to live to this isn't a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing. You think by the time you hit 65, you're going to be, some fat, ugly, bald guy.
It's all over for you then.
It's all over because everybody else in your orbit, everyone else in your family has sort of like dropped like a rock in when they hit 60, which by the way, that's pretty traditional what happens. Well, what if all of that is voluntary at this point? What if all of that can be reset? What if all of a sudden, because of the advancements in medical care, you now have the ability to increase your longevity? How many of you have given up how many of you absolutely have not just given up, but forgotten about what your goals and your dreams and your expectations were? So I asked one of my new coaching clients this question, and I really loved their answer, which I won't share with you, but I'll tell you the question. So if you knew that you were going to live, and this person I think was like 45, if you knew for sure you were going to live at least another 45 to 50 years, no question, maybe even longer, what would you be doing differently now? Like, what would that mean to you? And the pause, when you're on a coaching call and there's a pause, you asked a good question. And so the pause was, well, I guess I'd maybe go back to thinking about, and that was all the dreams that this person had that they lost contact with. I would go back and thinking about, I've always wanted to go to Africa, or I wanted to learn how to paint. Okay, so in order for you to enjoy those types of things, what are you going to have more of? Well, money. So does that mean that we have to start reframing the nature of the work that you do, and we start realizing that compounding interest, even if you're starting it at 45 or 55, compounding interest can still be your best friend? So a lot of you guys give up on wanting to build wealth and being rich where your money works for you. You no longer work for your money because you don't think you have enough time to benefit from the compounding. What do I mean by that? If you put $100,000 in the S&P 500 today, on average, it's going to double every like 7 or 8 years. So 100,000 if you're 55, when you're 65 will be 200,000, and when you're 75 it'll be 400,000. And maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, that's more than I have now, but really at the end of the day, does that really move the needle? Well, what if all of a sudden your time frame is out another 25 years? Now that 400,000 becomes 800,000 becomes 1.6 million, right? And what if we start saving this amount of money every single year, and we start all of a sudden building it so that within the next 5 years or 10 years, you have enough money coming in passively that you literally can have, people talk about the seasons of life. What if now officially, when we were growing up, Julie, a lot of people thought 30 or 35, you were basically halfway done. You remember that? It was weird, right?
That's middle age.
Right. People don't think that way anymore. Yeah, people would actually say that. And some people still believe that. What if the new middle age is actually 60?
Exactly.
Right?
That was my point before, is that, the calibration is changing.
Yeah, the calibration is changing, but people's software, your internal software about how you think about yourself and what you're capable of experiencing on this planet, you need to send that shit back to Jimmy Carter, because that's from the 1970s, right? You need to update your iOS, and you're not doing that. You need to update the reality that you can look, if you're alive, you're a blessed person. And if a great day is you wake up and you look at the green side of the grass, it's a great day. You only live once. I can give you guys a whole bunch of platitudes, but this is really the bottom line. You only live once and you're dead a real long time. And now it turns out, because of advancements in medical care and frankly, advancements that are happening in the real estate business, you can actually earn more money doing fewer things quicker and have longer period of time to have that money work for you and compound and enjoy it than I think you guys are allowing yourselves to believe. That's what my perception is. And I hope you're at least opening your minds to the fact that you are in the right place at the right time. I say that all the time. It's because I mean it. And if you're not feeling that, and if you're just kind of plateaued in your business, you're plateaued in your life, you've been successful, you're already successful, you're really, you want Julie and I in your life at a very, let's just say what it is, a very intimate level, then we're looking for you as elite coaching clients. And you can text me directly at 512-758-0206. So the output of this is we're only going to have a handful of clients. We're going to treat those, that's going to be Julie and I's essentially our private elite coaching group. We're going to start doing monthly interviews with all of you that want to do it. Not all of you will want to do it. And we're going to call it My Journey. So it's going to be My Journey with Julie Harris. And I'm going to have you, Julie and I will have you on this very podcast. And we're going to interview you on this very podcast. And we're going to be asking you 5 or 6 questions about your progress up the mountain. And it's not going to be, it'll be something that you'll look forward to. It'll be something that you can benchmark. It's going to be your online accountability journal. You're going to develop a fan base around your ascension. You're going to have people that are rooting for you. You're going to be, but here's the real reason I'm doing it is because it's going to be the ultimate form of accountability. Because
That's right.
if you know you got your interview on the third Wednesday of every month, you are going to absolutely be sweating that because you don't want to let down all the people that are paying attention to you from our podcast. We have tens of thousands of people that watch and listen to us every single day.
And
So
we want to highlight you, and you need to have some things to highlight about yourself. What are your accomplishments? Be the leader that you know that you are. Set the example, set the bar. How many people are criticizing agents all the time? Well, contribute to changing that. Set the bar high. Have people look up to you. Set the example.
And if you're an EXP Realty, what a killer way to basically generate folks that want to be sponsored by you. And whether you're in Julie and I's group or not, we could co-sponsor with you. So if you're an EXP, there's all kinds of added benefits from what I just said. If you're participating, I'm kind of sticking with the idea of my journey because it just seems nice, right? My journey, with Tim and Julie Harris and Bob Smith kind of thing, that kind of idea. I haven't worked on all the thumbnails art and whatnot, but that's where we're going with all this. Look, if you're wanting to be held accountable at the highest level in a loving, respectful way, because that's really the way we approach it, and we're going to design this around you, not what we want for you, but around what you want for yourself. And I did have some people yesterday who were saying to me after they said what their expectations were, they said, but Tim, am I thinking too small? And if you're asking the question, if you're thinking too small, the answer is yes, you are thinking too small. That is always the answer. So intuitively, you're capable of more. You're just setting the bar low so you can hit that goal. That's not really, that's not a good way to proceed. But look, we're going to co-create a plan for you. And this is going to be something that you're going to look back upon. This is our goal of being one of the best decisions you ever made, because you will be able to cover more ground in all the most meaningful ways in your life. And, yeah, I mean, what we can accomplish together in the next 90 days, let alone 12 months, will be extraordinary. And this is a great time for you to catch up, or this is a great time for you to leapfrog. Maybe what would have taken you 5 years, we can get done in a year. Anything you want to wrap up and say, Julie, because I actually have to get to a call.
I know. Well, we have just overwhelming enthusiasm and energy for you guys to share with you guys. So come over to us, be part of the coaching family. We can't wait to meet you.
This isn't Premier Coaching. This isn't Premier Plus. This is for probably 20 agents altogether, Julie and I's personal coaching clients. So this is you. If you're ready for it, you know what you're signing up for if you've been listening to this podcast. We don't pull any punches. Text me directly with some information about yourself. There's no such thing as too much detail with the original text that you are sending to me at 512-758-0206, 512-758-0206. Look, I know this is not for all of you. Not all of you are saying, I want this at some point in my life because I'm not quite there yet. I respect that. Just put us on the back burner. And when you get there, we'll be waiting for you. But for the rest of you who are ready, and you know how you're ready, because you've been successful in the past. You've plateaued. You're not feeling and probably not looking like the person you used to be. You have it in the back of your mind that you still have a lot of things you want to accomplish in life. And you just need to, frankly, in some cases, have a kick in the butt or at least be given direction to get back on course. That's what we're here for. Text me directly at 512-758-0206. In the meantime, I have to get to an elite coaching call. See you, Julie.